Hi, everyone. I'm Shalini. I lead HR with Maersk, which is the supply chain and logistics. And I have the absolute pleasure of one, being here in the summit, and two, have two of my really good friends from the industry, some really amazing leaders. So I'm really excited, not just to ask some questions, but learn from them. And the topic today is also really interesting, right? We've all gone through COVID. We still continue to do that. I'm at home, as you can see. And one of the things that has happened, not just with business, but also with leaders, is how we lead. I think it's going to change. It's already changed now, and it's going to change as we come back. So today is all about redefining the role of the leader and hear from these leaders how they redefine themselves, as well as what are some tips and tricks that they have for all of us as we listen to them. So without any further ado, I want to start by introducing them. Just know that I can spend the whole hour introducing them because that's how much they have done. But I'll try and do some justice by taking a few minutes to talk about both of them. So let me start with Amit Kalra. He is the head and managing director of Swiss Re. Amit, welcome. And I have this long list of things that you've done, but I'll try and talk about a few things that might be important for this conversation, right? You're right now at Swiss Re. You've been there since 2007. That's amazing. Lots of leadership stories coming out of there because you've held so many different roles, starting from research to business development to growth and capability and strategy and everything else. So we'd love to hear a lot more about those experiences as we go around this conversation. What also excited me was that you're an author for publications within Swiss Re. That is amazing, and you're a writer, so that will be great for us to learn about, as well as your startup initiatives. I think that will be great. And it's also interesting to know that you've been with GE, so some process mindset that will come out of everything that you share. So we're really excited. Great career. Welcome to this forum.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. And our next guest is an award winner. And again, like a long list of things, but Supriya, welcome.
Thank you.
Supriya is the VP of Western Digital. She also is the country manager for India. And she's doing a lot of work in strategic expansions of the team that she leads here. And she is also the brand leader and the chairperson of this brand here in India, which I think is great, and has had various experiences in the last 22 years with leading, with people and business and diversity, and a lot of entrepreneurial experience too. So we'd love to hear a lot more about how is it being a leader in this industry, being on boards, and if I can say the cliche, breaking the glass ceiling for a woman leader. So it'll be interesting to hear your story. And I'm also excited to congratulate you on the CEO of the Year award for D&I that you just received. So congratulations on that, and many others that you've received for top 100 best companies to work for women and many other awards. So welcome. We're privileged to have both of you on this forum.
Thank you, Shalini. Happy to be here.
Great. Okay, so let's start. And what I was thinking we could do, Amit and Supriya, is just go through some themes. Talk about what does a leader today look like? What would they look like in the future? What are some things they need to keep in mind as they come into this? Some pitfalls, maybe. And we've all heard that, while we can talk about culture, it's the leader of the team that brings the culture in and that builds the culture. So what would that look like for us? And then maybe end with a few specific scenarios that you might have gone through. Yeah. But maybe start with you. And it's been 8 months since we've all been in lockdown. So what's been your leadership journey in this 8 months, and how have you changed it to support this pandemic? Supriya, maybe we could start with you and then go to Amit from there.
Sure. Very interesting question, Shalini. First of all, happy to be here. And I think it's great to start with an overview. Pandemic is something that has been looming large. And I think we've gone through stages. And I would say, when you look around, when you interact with people, when I look at within Western Digital and also our connect with the HQ, I think there are three stages we've broadly gone through. We first was the acceptance to say, boy, it's here now. There is one virus that's put the entire world on hold. Is it really that big? Is it something that I need to pause, or all of us need to pause? So first was, is it really true? It's unparalleled event. It's not happened before. So I think that was acceptance. I would say as a company, as an individual, we kind of moved very quickly to accepting that. So I would say that was so far so good. The second was figuring out how to keep the work going. How do we make sure we are a hardware dependent company? We deal in the data storage innovation. Innovation is all about people getting together, collaborating, exchanging ideas. How do you do that? While all of that was on the mind, I think what really sailed us through was, when there is crisis, you can't have multiple priorities. So simplify your life. And I think worldwide we simplified to say one thing matters, and that is people. People first was a single most coded language, messaging that we all believed as leaders. And that is something that we lived and practiced. We just mobilized our entire workforce digitally across the world and said, you are home and you're not coming into office. We will worry about the rest of it later. Our job first is to keep you safe. So I think that worked very well. That phase, I would say, stayed for a little longer. And we learned to manage. So I would say the first was acceptance, the second was managing. All right, now you can continue to be home. What tools do we need to provide you? What forums do we need to open? How do we make sure the rest of the business now carries on, considering your safety is locked? So I would say that was our second. And from here, we transition to the third phase, which is, well, we are in business. We have to compete in the market. The things we're looking up in terms of everybody accepting and managing. We want to stay ahead as a company. We are competitive. We have lots to do. We have our own milestones to achieve. And that was the third stage, that let's get ahead. So I think a lot of our work moved online, a lot of initiatives moved online, and it's a great story to share that we didn't miss a beat. Our employees didn't miss a beat. Wherever we were plugged in, we were engaged, and we did deliver to the market, and we continue to deliver. So it's been a good story, Shalini. It has come with its own challenges, which I'm sure we will talk about as we unfold the conversation. But
Yeah.
I would say it has been personally for me one that's full of learning, one that has made us think different,
Mhm.
one that has shattered our myths
Yeah.
that you've got to discover new ways of doing it. So, very humbling and a very high learning experience is where I would say we are as leaders.
Great. Supriya, that's awesome. And some of the words that have stayed with me is simplify, right? And sometimes we think everything has to be, for it to be good, it needs to be complicated. And it doesn't have to be. Simplify it and didn't miss a beat. I think that's the most important thing. And we'll talk more about it as we go along. So, Amit, what is your story, company wise, but also you as a leader? What are the one or two things you're doing differently because of this crisis?
No, thanks. Supriya actually very well articulated the phases, right? Because I think many of the organizations went through very similar journey, right? When you get hit by once in a, I would say, century kind of a pandemic situation, because this situation was quite a great leveler, right? No one really know, what kind of challenges emerge, how long this will be, the unknowns around it, the magnitude of impact. And if I talk more from a leadership perspective, it just makes it, multi-dimensional, complicated if you have to think through. But you just highlighted this point, Shalini. I think it's about how do you keep it simple, right? So even if I have to bring more from a leadership perspective, it was a people-first strategy. Yes, so it was a no-brainer. The safety, health, the well-being of our employees, that was topmost in our mind. It was the center for any decision for leaders. It was more about how are we enhancing the connect, communication, trying to understand what's the pulse of the employees. It was a genuine care, yeah, not just about employees, their families, the well-being, and what can organization do, to support them, right? And of course, yeah, we were into also unprecedented lockdown. So yeah, whatever was feasible, what's possible that time, yeah, we looked into that. Uh, Maybe the second aspect, I would say, because this is also, I would say, a challenge and at the same time an opportunity. Every crisis, I always say, need to be looked with the optimistic frame as well. Yeah, and one of the things that we did was we were enabling or driving ownership, right? Because in times like these, yeah, people generally tend to get into a bit more cautious, conservative stance in terms of, they do ask, what should they be doing, right? And at that time, as a leader, you have to show trust, encourage them to take decision because they are the most informed ones, to take that decision. So what I'm trying to say is this empowerment, decision making needs to be distributed across all the levels of the management hierarchy, right? And I mean, within the organization, we drove leadership from every seat. Yeah, so it's not about you are a people manager or you're not. It's about each of us are leader in our own right, and we need to act as a leader. We need to own it up, right, and take the right decision. And maybe the third element I would say is more around agility. Yeah. So of course we all have teams which are multifunctional with a lot of expertise, experience lying. But in a situation like pandemic, yeah, you get only limited amount of information, right? So it's never a clear picture, but you have to take a decision based on whatever 30-40% clarity you have. And as a team, you can't really get into discussions and over discussions. So you as a leader need to be much more decisive, iterative. You take a decision and yeah, you may make some mistakes, but since you're doing it in an iterative manner, you can always course correct, make an adjustment and move forward. So I would say overall, from a leadership standpoint, you have to really apply different gears of leadership. You will be hit with a lot of unknowns, yeah, but you need to move ahead.
Yeah, great, Amit. And what resonated with me, amongst many others, is leadership from every seat. I think that's so powerful. And I come from Maersk, and if you imagine Maersk and containers and vessels and everything, so mechanical, if you will. So we assumed that leadership meant title, and everybody at that title could do whatever. And now we have hundreds and thousands of people sitting at home and being leaders of their own life, their own work, and it's been an amazing journey. So maybe taking that cue, and maybe Amit will start with you and go to Supriya from there. As you think about redefining the role of a leader, right? We spoke about people first, which means leaders are most important to manage the people. So what do you think are the top three things that will be important for the leader of the future?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you were asking Supriya. No, I would say, one of the nice thing which has really happened is there is a lot of genuine care and connect, which has got established. So whenever we talked about leadership in the past, yeah, there was always a good balance of IQ, EQ, but EQ was never found in abundance, right? So it was sometimes superficial. Yeah, you get into meeting, you say, okay, how's the weather? And you just move into the business topics. But I'm sure each of us can relate to the fact that if we get into meetings now, I mean, even if my topics are derailed, I really am genuinely interested in knowing about the well-being and how the other person is doing. Of course, fully respecting the privacy aspect, the personal life. And I think this care and connect, we have to take it beyond this pandemic situation, right? As a leader, we need to be very genuine, authentic. It has to be a very personal connect, and this as a favorable trait needs to move forward. Yeah. uh, and I would say, another difference, if I have to say, in terms of what the role of leader is, especially for our colleagues in India, because we have a global environment where, we're engaging with Americas, Europe, and Asia. So many of our managers, for example, they were not prepared to lead the teams virtually. Yeah. So of course, even in the flexible environment, partly, yeah, they'll have people working from home. But this was a new environment, remote working, how you engage staff, how you drive priorities. You have a business to pursue. You have to drive an impact. You have to drive innovation. And now you have to do it all in remote manner. So leading virtually itself, and that actually takes off a lot of glass ceilings. Yeah, because now a lot is possible from anywhere. So you can't say that this role can be performed only from the headquarter, or this role can be performed from that location. I think if we have the right capabilities in our centers in India, people can take those global regional roles. And I know that there are already some examples of it. So this is another new feature, yeah, which has emerged, and I'm sure a lot of colleagues are really learning and developing in that journey, I would say. And since uh, we we talked about leadership from every seat. Yeah, one of the practice, maybe I want to give an example, which actually helped navigate the crisis, and we are actually pushing more of that or coming up with a second level of iteration. We call it own the way you work. Yes, so last 3-4 years we've been bringing this practice. It's a mindset, it's a culture. You need to set up your own schedules. You want to work from home, it's fine, but it's more about outcome-based engagement. Yeah, so it's not about, okay, on a daily basis you have to report out what you're doing and not, but hey, you have a project deliverable. These are the outcomes you have to accomplish, and you are really owning it up, right? So basically, you are decentralizing this ownership empowerment even through some of these practices.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Like we've all worked in GCC kind of setting, and one of the most common question is where should this be located, and or where is this person located, and that's a moot question now because nobody cares. So, Priya, what are your thoughts? What does the leader of the future look like for you?
So, Shalini, I think Amit has had a wonderful start to this, and I totally echo and resonate with his thoughts, which is, so you'll hear me saying more of the same, and I'll see how I can put in a little bit of what we did at Western Digital differently. But it's clearly people first, and I think a lot of authenticity. People are very smart, and I think a lot of respect we need to give to that. They can understand and they can relate to you. They know when you're being genuine and when you're not. So I think the mixed messages, again, I will go back, there is no room for that. There is no room for saying something and doing something else. Digitally, everything is recorded. You play back and you're like, oops, there I see something is different. So I think really being authentic. When you say people first, you mean it. Every message of yours has to say that. Every action of yours has to say that. And that is something I think just being consistent. Now, why do I say that is so different? We are all in business. We are all living in a capitalist economy. We've all looked at different times and taking some actions which need not be in the interest of only employees, but they may make a larger sense for the organization. I think at this point of time in pandemic, we have absolutely stayed away from any of those conversations. We are very, very clear. It's people first, their safety, and Amit put it beautifully. The safety is on multiple corners. It's physical, it's well-being, and what are you doing as an organization to enable that? Are you setting up helpline? Are you signing up with counseling services? So I think all of that. Are you as a lead team coming together? So I would take two things I would want to say. One is my CMT, the crisis management team, structuring that team and enabling them, empowering them to take decisions and keep us sane. Look at the policies around restructure, understand, and simplify for us and the employees. I think that one structure worked beautifully. Second is my India leadership team. There are 32 people who sit in my staff. Amazingly, every week we discussed. Every one of us had the same message. It is not like software team is hearing different, hardware is hearing different, a content hearing different. Every one of the teams were hearing the common, simple message of stay safe, stay at home, and we'll figure about the rest later. So I think that was a huge change. Usually as leaders, we are together, but I think this was a time when togetherness was the key. It was imperative. It was not nice to do. It was critical. And, that was how we kind of prioritized it. So I think that was the difference in how we did it. The second part was communication. I mean, I may say I care for you. How do I communicate that care? I say I can put myself in your shoes, the empathy, but how do I communicate that? So I think our communication strategy and kind of simplifying and enabling became very, very critical part. Right. And again, each one of us are different. Yeah. Our hiring team is going and onboarding new hires. The HR business partners are probably working with exits. So how do you make sure each of those touch points, we are letting go, we are understanding what they are going through and where they are going, wish them well. We are onboarding, and these are coming in a virtual environment. They've never seen any one of us. So for them to just pick up a call and say, hey, Supriya, I'm stuck here. Can you help me? That is not going to happen. It's going to take a longer time to institutionalize them, bring them as part of our culture. So meeting with new hires differently. Women, there is so much of discussion. Shalini and I will relate to that, perhaps a little than Amit would. A little more Amit, not very different. But there is just, their world has changed. There are two jobs. I have entered the kitchen a lot more, I can tell you, cooked a lot more, looked after my family a lot more than I've done pre-pandemic. Yeah. So that part has changed. So dealing with new hires differently, listening to the women differently. Managers' role has changed. Like Amit said, they're dealing with virtual teams. How do you listen to them? How do you enable them? Senior leadership is going through a different challenge. They have to report, understand, and get all the objectives met. So I would say communication, yes, but segmenting your communication and then reacting to it, responding to it, taking them along has been a very, very critical step of leadership, which I would say has completely shifted. I'll take an example. I'll say I was talking to university hires. We onboarded almost 180 of them. And a month into that, they were like, how do you do all this? They are completely separate from their friends at campus. They can't be at their hometowns. They can't go to the toilet and have a beer and kind of shake a leg. And how do you give them that feeling that we welcome you? It's like Simon Sinek says, these are your family. Treat them differently. We want to, but we had the digital medium to use. So I've given them a preview of my house to say, this is me. I'm the same as you, not very different. So I think communication is the second part, Shalini. The last I would say is, I say if you want to get unhappy, look at what's breaking. If you want to be happy, then look at what's working for you. So I think spinning messages beautifully but authentically and talking to them and saying, look around what has not changed. Well, your bosses are the same, good or bad. They are the same. Your work environment isn't very different. It's digital. So I think building in that and then bringing them back to a lot of events online. We've done Data Innovation Bazaar with government online. We've done a virtual partner summit online. Wow. So I think bringing in, stability, a semblance of a real work life, but in a digital world, and tell them all is okay. It's normal. It's different, but it is still similar. Okay. And then bringing in a message of stability and saying, you know what, COVID is not going away, but life must move on. So, if I quote Shakespeare, he would kill me right now because I'll say, he said the world is a stage. I would say the world is a digital stage. So all of us are actors. Let's do our bit. So it's been different, Shalini, but it's been fascinating to come on this forum and share and smile and talk to our colleagues. So I think it's been wonderful. It's been good.
Right, and you guys spoke about humbleness, and that's what this is, right? You could look at it as, oh my God, this is happening to me, or you could be like, I'm so grateful I have time with my family and so many things. And I have to tell you a joke. So we were asking about what is going well, and we talked so much about relationship building. So one leader actually stood up and said, my relationship with my kitchen sink has gotten so much stronger than it's ever been before. And so he's waiting to come back to work, of course, and build relationship with other things. But that takes me to my next thought I've had, right? This crisis had to come or had to happen for us to think differently, operate differently, maybe as leaders become more empathetic. Let's think about a day when vaccine is here, we're all back to work. There isn't a crisis the way it is anymore. What do you think is going to happen? Like, what do you think are the pitfalls that will make us go back, maybe? Amit, do you want to take a stab at it?
So, I would say we are in the crisis. It's more of like an interim normal. We don't know what the future would look like. But of course, we all are putting in efforts to shape up what that new normal should be. Right. So I will not go into the predictions. I definitely know that the future working model would be more hybrid, more flexible. It would be more inclusive, right? And inclusiveness needs to be very broadly defined. I think we always have very limited lens. I think it needs to be looked in a very comprehensive manner. And to me, there are two focus areas, that we need to look into. One is the culture part, right? I think Supriya gave example of her firm where she onboarded so many people. Same is the case with Swiss Re Bangalore. Yeah, so we recruited 15% of our staff in last 6 months, right? So that gives a very heavy, I would say, sometimes it gives me a bit of stress. It's good that, okay, we are integrating people. We have our obligations even to the society. We have to take care of relationships with universities, and we are growing. So that's also an impact that we are creating at the society, at the global level, and so on. But how are they integrating into the culture of the organization, right? So these 200 plus people whom we have recruited, they are definitely integrating into the processes or the teams. They know what to do, but have they really got an understanding of what this organization is all about, what the industry dynamics are, how the decisions are taken, right? What's the core ethos of the organization? So I'm not saying that they will not be able to pick it up, right? Of course, we are putting in so much of interventions, coffee sessions with me, different leaders. We're doing a lot of fun engagement activity, even in the pre-recruitment stage, so that they are tied in. Uh, but I think we need to be watchful here for these trends, right? So I can't really say basis just 3-4 months of experience that we are doing good. I'm sure there'll be more midterm concerns which will come, and we need to really look into resolving that. The other aspect is also starts with C. It's collaboration. So building communities, collaborating. I think it's a very natural tendency for people to just work in their own respective silos or the defined mandates. And I think the beauty of our organization is because we are more or less like a microcosm of the group, right? Where you are covering the entire value chain. You need to understand what the customer needs are, what the business dynamics are. You have to break the silos. Of course, for some of our existing staff, they already had pre-connections, with the people they knew, who is where. So even if they move remotely, they can still maintain, develop, and further work on driving innovation, creating business impact. Again, think of new joiners, who are joining in. How do they build that network, collaborate? Of course, there'll be a lot of formal, structured way, but we also know a lot of connects come informally. If we come out of the meeting, there are always those 2-3 minutes where you get an idea and you give someone that responsibility to pursue an idea, or there are water cooler chats which are happening. And there is a lot of expertise, new expertise, which is also coming in, which the rest of the organization is not aware of. So to me, this culture and collaboration, I would say, is something like a focus area. And if it's not managed properly, it could create concerns as well, as the new normal gets shaped up.
And somebody actually spoke to me about the water cooler you just mentioned, right? Like how we bump into people in a water cooler. There is an idea to do a tele bumping. So you actually over the phone go and bump into somebody, then and that's where I think creativity comes in, right? Like you're not saying I can't bump into somebody anymore. I'm saying I'm going to find out a different way of bumping into somebody and still maintain the formal, informal conversation. So Subriya, what do you think as you think about we come back? What should people be cautious about? Leaders be cautious about?
This is a great question, Shalini, and this is one that I think all of us are spending a lot of time and energy, and perhaps sometimes even losing sleep on, because it's like I'd like to quote Socrates. He says, "A life worth living, it just has to be examined." So I think my view is we've looked at this year. Let's examine what have we learned from it. There are so many learnings across, and I think Amit has fabulously said that. Let's look at the culture. Culture was different before. We started by saying there is a shattering of glass ceiling everywhere, but there are ceilings of multiple kinds, and we all face that. We face it as women, of course. There is no shying away from that. We face it as geos when we are trying to be significant in the overall scheme of the company. We face it with other, sometimes when the cliques get formed and we realize that there is one group that's bonding more than the other. We sometimes have affinitization, which is great, but an extreme part of affinitization is isolation. So I think we look at all of that and we say that there are these ceilings everywhere. I always say that we are born with a white slate, clean slate, and then we are born, then we are given titles, we are given layers. And by the time, hopefully, or not so hopefully, when we are, breathing our last, it's kind of reduced to a very tiny bit of, oh, she was just this and this. And I'm like, let's live a full life. When we come back to workplace, let's be a lot more human. We have seen mortality facing us. We have seen fear within ourselves and for our family and our colleagues and our employees. What have we learned from it? Value for life. And we are not giving it any connotation to say American life, Indian life. We're just saying life. Each life is equally valued across the world. And therefore, can we look at having no lens on it? Can we be neutral? And therefore, a simple word could be inclusive. But inclusive is your job, Amit's job, and my job. So if all of us tend to be a lot more open-minded, respect each other, and therefore treat each other as equal with respect. My sense is a lot of the issues of the world will perhaps disappear. So maybe I'm being a utopian optimist, but I would look at least at Western Digital India, which is my work sphere of influence, and I would say with industry colleagues as you, as Maersk, as
Yeah.
Swiss Re, and other where we have influence, to
Yeah.
say, let's make sure we have an open mindset, maybe
Yeah.
just openness, not even a mindset. And therefore, you're right, Amit, the culture needs to open up. We need to partner with our HR colleagues, with our leadership teams to make sure that we do not use filters anymore. We have a neutrality of culture, we have neutrality of talent. We are not
Yeah.
looking at talent with micro lens. I would look at that, Shalini. I would look at a lot more flexibility being mainstreaming. We today have flexibility as one of the things we do. I think we sometimes, perhaps I'll be like to more honest, we sometimes do more lip service because even when we are digitally logged in, we used to ask in the previous era, hey Supriya, are you logging in from home? Oh, yes,
Yeah.
I am. But can you not ask me that question? You see me, you talk to me, I'm making sense. Does it really
Yeah.
matter where I'm plugged in from? So let's do
Yeah.
away with the questions and respect presence. So I see flexibility as mainstreaming. What I also see is the art of the possible. Rethink, reimagine. We are all digital overnight, but the conferences
Yeah.
are happening, dialogue is happening. So when we are not faced with crisis, can we invent a crisis in our mind and innovate? Well, that's how innovation happens. Think of the art of possible. So I think I would say that, and I would conclude by saying we all exist for a purpose. Our organizations exist for a purpose. The why of the organization, let's continually remind ourselves and put it into action, irrespective of which geography or which color, caste, creed we belong to. I would think of a world a lot more open and hopefully value human life, is what I would say.
Wow, that this is deep. I love it, and we're quoting Shakespeare, which is awesome. Which also tells you how timeless these learnings are, right? And for me, this crisis has been a leveler. Like it, rich, poor, America, Asia, wherever you see. In some ways, we're all learning together. I'm really passionate about the environment. This has done so much good for the environment. So I kind of feel like there's so much to be grateful for. And if we switch gears for a second, and I want to, we've spoken about leaders and we've spoken about what we are responsible to do as we come back. And if we pause, you also have leadership roles as country heads, as managing directors for your whole organization. So as you think about policies, practices, how can we create an ecosystem that helps these leaders stay empathetic, stay the way they have been through the crisis? Supriya, what are some things that you are thinking of doing or changing to enable this?
So, it's interesting, Shalini. I'll take this with an example. We launched something called Club Next. And just a small example, it's not important what we did. I think the important part is, how we did it. Um, we all know we have to coach our leaders. We have to develop them to think different. It's a skill that can be brought in. I can share with a lot of vulnerability and honesty that I don't think I was as empathetic before as I am today. There was a need of the hour to put empathy at the forefront and for me to reflect and say, am I empathetic? Like Amit said, we are all asking each other, hey, how are you? And before the person can answer, we move on. There is enough and more said on that. Every call starts with knowing what they are. So we thought here is an opportunity to coach. So we developed Club Next, which is a coaching intervention, Chandani, but however, we did it like a cohort. We said, let's take our top 20 leaders. Who are our future leaders, by the way. They're not leaders for today, but they're leaders for tomorrow. Tomorrow, if you and I are sitting and saying, hey, this is a big job, this is a big opportunity, who should it go to? It should go to them. And therefore, we looked at that and we made a 9-month intervention and we kind of rolled it out. We're at the concluding time, really. And if you were to talk to any one of them, they were like open eyed. They said, wow, we didn't know our impact on the others. We did not know sometimes what we say comes across very differently. It's a coaching. Each one of them is given an executive coach, but they're all together in this journey. So there are these stops, milestones where they discuss, encourage each other, share learnings. And I think that in itself has been powerful. And I can share when I was thinking of this and launching this, there was pushback. They were thinking, what's wrong with her? There is so much on the plate, and now she's asking us to go through this. There was a bit of resistance, and I'm happy that we have a safe space where they can tell me on my face saying, are you sure it's the right time? I'm like, just hang in there. I have an executive coach. He is so much, making a difference in my life. Just hang in there. It has worked beautifully, Shalini. So I think we need to come up with multiple such interventions where we develop unique programs and not something which is one size fit all. We take your individuality into account and customize something, and we give you coaches that can help you transform. I think this is just one example. I'll pause here. We've done a lot of other stuff, but this is
Yeah.
something that comes at top of my mind. Thank you.
And coaching reminds me, and it's such a critical skill right now, right? And while at Maersk we did what you're talking about, we also realized that leaders have been telling people how something needs to be done for a long time, more so in my industry than many others, right? Which means an employee comes to you and he's so used to you telling him what needs to be done that he's happy about it. He maybe wants to do it differently but never challenges it. So when we started this coaching and leaders started asking questions, these employees are like, why are you doing this to me? Like, why are you just not telling me what to do so I can go away and do these things? So one of the interesting things that we did was also acceptance of coaching. So while we created an ecosystem of coaching, we then got the employees to understand what these leaders are going through and why are they asking more questions than before? Why are they creating insight? And 6 or 8 months of this has helped us create a lot of self-managed teams, which has made working from home so much more productive now because then they can manage themselves. Like Amit said, leadership from every seat. So it's been an amazing journey for us. Amit, what have you done? What are your thoughts on this?
Sure. Since we started talking about coaching, right? So you have to really enable your leaders as a coach, right? And that's a topic. So we also triggered a lot of specific interventions of skilling them, developing their competencies around it. But there are numerous, I would say, interventions. Yeah, I think the core theme here is the continuous learning that we need to focus on, right? And especially when it comes to leadership development, you really need to segment your population, right? It cannot be one size fits all. You create a fancy course and ask people to apply for it. It's not like that. So we have a separate niche course only for the first time managers at the junior level where we tie up with IM Bangalore. And during pandemic, we said, hey, we want to do it virtually. I know that they are missing those 3-4 days in IM Bangalore campus, which is lush green. And I also used to enjoy it, going there. But now the entire course is happening virtually. There is one course which is focused more around middle managers, which we do it in a very cross your country basis, right? So this is not a group-wide course. It's still a bespoke course, but we also have another global center in Slovakia. Yeah, so we have colleagues from both Slovakia and Bangalore coming together in that joint leadership focus. Again, this happened virtually. Otherwise, it would have happened in person. Uh, in last year or two, yeah, we created another angle to it to bring this empathy and the social aspect more around sustainability. So we created a program called Shine, where we pick up a social entrepreneur, right? And an early stage social entrepreneur who's trying to drive innovation in the social sector. This could be under the theme of renewables, water, or any of the social issue which we as a country are facing. And then bringing together 8 to 10 colleagues from our organization, cutting across different level. And they are stepping into the shoes of an entrepreneur and literally acting as an entrepreneur, right? So then it becomes a joint team between a social entrepreneur and our team, right? And they have 4 to 6 months where they have to come up with a business proposal plan, which they have to present to Shark Tank, and then I'm challenging them as a real venture capitalist. And
Nice.
only when the business proposal is sound, I'm releasing the funds which will go to social entrepreneur to boost the business. So there is like a obligation on part of each and every individual. Now, this kind of a leadership course brings different angles together. So they act as an entrepreneur, they have a social inclination, they are thinking of an impact in a very different manner. Yeah, you have to think about commercials, but you also have to think about the lives, those individuals, families living in the rural sector or urban poors or whatever that social group could be. So I would say we have to really think about what segment we are approaching and what should be the right intervention that we as an organization need to drive. And there cannot be one size fits all, but yeah, we have to really look at the need analysis and look at these interventions.
Yeah. And that's so powerful. We're not just building leaders for the organization, but for the community now. And I have also seen that when these leaders do something from a social and community perspective, when they do come back to work with the teams, they're a lot more empathetic, a lot more humble. I also see that they then start doing things with very little resources because they've worked in situations where the resources were
Exactly.
very different. So that creates a different kind of leadership. That's amazing, Amit. Thanks for sharing. And while I have you, you spoke about culture, right? A couple of questions ago, and I've seen this. Like there might be two people sitting beside each other, and you ask them, "What do you think is the culture of the company?" And many times the answer is different because their perception of culture comes from the leader they report into. So, which means leaders
Yeah.
play a huge role in how we build culture. This isn't a very specific question about what are you doing, but in terms of when you think about the influence of a leader on culture, what should we keep in mind? Because it's such a huge responsibility, and sometimes we don't remember it as leaders. So, what are one or two things you think we should keep in mind as culture builders of an organization?
No, you're right, Shalini. I mean, culture is so unique to the organization, and it sometimes becomes very hard to explain. Yeah, you bring 10 people in room, even though senior leaders, everyone will have a different interpretation. And it's good. You personalize the culture, right? And that's the idea, right? So from a leadership perspective, you have to really address two parts. When you're really looking at building or shaping up the culture, because it's a very dynamic thing. Yeah? So one is the why part. Second is the how part. Yeah, because I think what's are very much clear to everyone. Everyone knows what they have to do, and the why part again has two sub points here in my mind. Yes, so one is the broader purpose of why do you exist as an organization, right? So
Yeah.
Swiss Re is a 155-year-old risk knowledge company, and our vision is clear: we make the world more resilient. So even if during COVID we have incurred $3 billion of losses, yeah, and we feel proud of that fact because this money is going to support the society and economy. Yeah,
Wow.
because as a
Yeah.
reinsurer, you are paying, indemnifying, and you're ensuring individuals, corporates, even governments are becoming resilient in their working, right? So we take the pride in that. That's our core value proposition in action. So the why purpose is extremely strong. That even if we are a commercial enterprise, there is a strong social impact that we create in our day in day out life, right? The other aspect of why is also, what's the ambition, what's the aspiration, which you need to pursue at the personal level, at your team level, at the functional level, which is tied up to the overall organizational purpose, right? So I think you really as a leader need to connect these. Yeah, if you're not connecting this, people are very transactional in nature what they are doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is the why part. The
Yeah.
second part, what I highlighted, was the how part, which is the behaviors, which is the imperatives, right? So leadership from every seat, which I highlighted, is the how part for us. Yeah. So we make it explicitly clear that there are three key imperatives under that. Yeah. So one is be courageous. Yeah, so you
Right.
need to really own it up. You have to challenge the status quo. Second aspect is how are you adapting at speed, right? So it's a VUCA environment. How do you navigate that? But agility is also becoming extremely important, right? You can't just be
Right.
sitting on that.
Right.
And the third aspect is how are you creating that joint movement to
Yeah.
really enable your organization to move forward. So
Yeah.
for us, when we do our performance management, and which we also changed, by the way, we made it continuous performance. So there are no those administrative year ends, but
Yeah.
performance needs to be monitored and checked in throughout the year. We are looking at the what aspect and how aspect, and we give equal weightage to both of that, right? So
Yeah.
to me, I think as long as leaders are really focusing on the why and how,
Yeah.
culture is becoming dynamic, is being shaped up to the benefit of the organization.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I have so many examples of the how sometimes getting missed, right? Because you think about business results and everybody got so much money back to the company, but they might have been really rude and disrespectful, too many dead bodies on the way, but didn't care about it in the past, maybe. But now we're talking so much about it's not just about what you brought to the table, but how you got it to the table. That's most important. So, Amit, really great thoughts on that. Thank you. Supriya, what do you think? What comes to mind when you think culture?
I'm just tuned into Amit talking about culture, HR
Mm-hmm.
processes so beautifully. I think that was just wonderful to hear him. So totally echo that, Shalini. I would, resonate exactly. I will say it's again very personal. What you need to invest time in. So I think, right, we always say the tone needs to be set from the top. So I think I've seen that in GE. Both Amit and I share that common, organization. It was amazing being at the first company with amount of time that the CEO is investing, the Center for Crotonville, the leadership development. So I think our learnings early on have been to say this is important. Technology, I lead a technology company in India. It's all about data, cutting edge, flash, hard disk storage. You can make it as complex as you can because it is complex. But at the end of the day, if you're defining your unifying fabric, which is what binds you, like the family that eats together stays together, that's still very simple. It's not that complicated. So I think at the office, we are very, clear about it to say, let's invest time in it. Are we journeying together? Having conversations. And I would take a coaching phrase to say, while we have very clear values of think big, obviously all about innovation, and a pandemic has made us all think big and think different. Do it together, which is collaborate. You only reach so much so far, but if you journey together, the journey becomes a lot more fun and you end up achieving a lot more, right? So I think in the end is make it happen, which is all about you and I can talk, we can collaborate, but if the actual results don't happen, we really have very little to show. Proof of the pudding is in eating. So I think while that culture is there, Shalini, the simplification of that culture in attribute, I think Amit touched upon that. How? So if we are saying empathy, let's begin each call by simply saying, how are you doing? And make sure we spend time on it judiciously, and then we move forward. So I think it's bringing those attributes alive. But I would say, you got to set the tone from the top. I think I completely agree with it. And you got to invest time in it and create a safe space wherein if you're not talking the cultural language and we are going away from it, what are we doing to bring people back on that track? And how are we coaching and I think herding them around a similar path? I think that is again more important. So it's not highlighting only the positives, but also dealing with off tracks and making sure that we are setting in a culture of saying, we mean this is how we do it. And in case not, we will deal and have a conversation and work with you to, explain a lot more to you and help you understand and align. So I think that's been a good story.
Great. And if I can just think about a few things you said, both of you. One, Amit, for an HR person, you're a dream business leader because of how much you're talking about people. And so naturally, and that's where I was going with this, that you could give every leader a cheat sheet saying, hey, start every call with this, end it with this, and blah, 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 right? But we have such intelligent people who are picking up on, oh, you're being fake, you just had to do it because you checked it off your checklist. And creating that vulnerability, the honesty, the authenticity is the most important. And one of the things that's worked for me is to be honest myself. When I'm having a bad day and if somebody asks me on my team, instead of faking like I'm always happy and positive, I'm saying, hey, you know what, it's been a difficult day. That gives them permission to say that back to me if they're having a difficult day. But if I was always positive and always this, then I don't think I'm giving them opportunity to see me as a human being going through something like this. And you both said many things that's connected to being us and then creating purpose and value. That was amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
It's interesting you say that, Shalini. Yesterday I was tweeting in the evening, late evening, that's usually my time, and I said, how does empathy get built? It gets built by self-disclosure and active listening. If I am all put together all the time, it's great to read stories. So I'm a big believer that let's share our failures. I happily tell my women colleagues, and of course equally male colleagues if they want to listen, and of course they do, that there are days when I've had a rough day and there are days when I don't have the answers. There are days when I network and give a call to outside people and say, guys, help me understand this. It's absolutely okay to not have answers, but I think once they hear that you're vulnerable, you do drop a tear once in a while. You do have days when there is so much happening and you don't seem to be putting it all together. It just makes you a lot more human and therefore easy to relate to. So I think being vulnerable, it's a strength. It's not a sign of weakness. And I think which is where social and mental well-being, I think it's okay not to be put together all the time. Exactly. I think it's absolutely okay to be having a bad day. So thanks, Shalini, for highlighting that. I totally agree with that.
Yes, and we've spoken about being human, right? That's what we all are. Combination of both. Yeah. And that kind of takes me, and we have maybe 15 minutes, so I'll try and do some examples maybe. And I can start with something that I went through that I need advice from both of you. We've seen an increased number of people who might be showing signs of depression, having trouble either staying alone because they couldn't go back home on time, or being depressed because of health. And as a leader, if what can I do to support them? Like that's kind of, if I can sense it, how do I sense it that somebody is might be a little off, and what can I do to support them? Amit, maybe start with you and see what thoughts you have on that.
Sure. I think Supriya just articulated really well, right? So showing your vulnerabilities, right? So you don't need to have answers to everything. I mean, as a leader, if you're saying you're getting into the call and you're going to solve someone's personal issue or a challenge, I mean, you're mistaken. I think in general, I would say you just need to be there for someone. Yeah. You have to be a listener. Yeah. So there's a reason why we have 2 ears and one mouth, right? So we have to listen more. And for people to share their experiences, what's their personal state, and that is very important. I think half of the time, I think their stress level has reduced just by sharing, right? And what we also did was, we organized number of platforms which were just a very open sharing sessions. Yeah, so if someone who was one of the early ones who got COVID positively affected, who was brave enough to come out and share the personal experiences. It was a super hit session in terms of participation, where people are just coming in at, everyone has their own personal anxiety level to any challenge. And then this hearing that, hey, I'm not the only one here, right? I have so many people who are thinking in the same line. Again, that de-stresses an individual, right? Uh, then, while of course, we had number of, I would say, interventions on mental wellness, well-being. We tied up with Cultfed for physical fitness sessions, which we were giving virtually. But we said, no, we have to do it in a much more structured and sustainable manner. Yeah, it cannot be just because it's COVID. Yeah, we do a few things. So we actually launched a mental well-being chapter. So it was a global initiative. We said we need to be mental health champions. We need to identify some of those ambassadors, champions, and really take the taboo of this entire topic, right? And then that's where leaders need to model some of the behavior, right? And I was one of the first ones to say, hey, I'll be the health champion. I'll go through the training, intervention, and personally, I have benefited a lot. I mean, over last 2.5 years, I'm doing regular practice of mindfulness, meditation.
Nice.
It really helps me calm down, right? And I'm sharing these that, hey, you don't need to really hit something, yeah, and only then you start doing it. It's more about how do you keep yourself calm, composed, focused, self-aware. I think as a leader, the most important thing is doing your own personal checking. So I'm sure Supriya, you will also have your own experiences when COVID hit us that first day. If you're not doing your own check-in, what's your own personal anxiety level? I mean, what will you show in front of people? You don't have to be artificial. You have to be genuine, right? So you have to express yourself, but you have to be aware, okay, where do you stand? And then what are the bigger topics to pursue? So it becomes extremely important.
Yeah. And Amit, 100 points for mentioning meditation and mindfulness, because I'm a huge fan. And at some point, it wasn't seen cool enough to meditate. And they were like, not in a company, come on. But now everybody is waking up to how important it is. And it isn't about doing it 3 hours in the middle of Himalayas, right? It's about just being mindful so you're present for yourself and for others. And that's the biggest learning in all of this, right? And Supriya, if I can add something as you comment on this, let's talk about women leaders and women employees, right? And there are times when to say I need help or to say I'm not doing okay also is seen as sometimes a weakness, and maybe it's a perception, but it is there and it's very, very strong. How have you helped in a situation like that? What's your advice for women leaders and male leaders actually?
Sure. So, great question again, Shalini. It's again comes with, how genuine and comfortable you are. Extremely genuine and comfortable. One of the things that I figured out was that it was easy for me to be authentic. I think so. I think sometimes we have to sit down, reflect, and say, who are you? I think in the digital world and there's so much of information explosion with so many priorities on the table with family, work, our ambitions, industry, events. I think we are sometimes getting, maybe I wouldn't say we are, but I think we run the fear of getting lost. So having time to, sit back and pause, and I think pandemic put a huge pause on all our lives, but it just gave us an opportunity to pause and say, where are we going? Who are we? What do we want? I think the why became very clear. So I have never practiced meditation as much, Shalini, as I need to. I would say I need to practice, and now it's want. And Amit is right. The first few months were it was tough. Not being able to see your family, not being able to go to office, not being able to connect with your colleagues, not being able to lead from the front. We are all taught. All of that did put us stress, but I would say thanks to the HR team for coming up with wonderful sessions, clinics, signing up, running monthly mailers, sessions, webinars, tuning in, logging in. I think all of that aspect was very well done. The other thing that worked for us is women leaders. I knew that they are dealing with things which are different perhaps from our work male colleagues, because there is research that says for every 3-4 hours of US male that puts in, the women kind of put in probably 3.5. But in India, a woman puts in 4.5 hours, and probably a male colleague does only half an hour of the housework. So our inequities are much larger at home, and therefore the pressure on women is a lot more, and therefore they had 2 full-time jobs, aging parents, young children. So we have something called a seat at the table. We used it at different forums, but this time it became my forum to talk to them and say it's absolutely okay to say no to people at home, to say you're on a call and you can't do this. And all of us maybe have different work structures. So can we just go ahead and put a small, simple chart? I showed them I have charts in my house. I am not looking at fancy, equipment coming in, whiteboards, putting all that. So sometimes let's not, again, make life complicated. Simple. Put a chart to say, I am busy. This is the time. And negotiate your boundaries a bit, Shalini. I'm a big believer of women trying to negotiate, but sometimes hesitating. I'm very comfortable negotiating my boundary with my husband, with my family, with my office to say, after 6, if I'm signing out and I have a 9-8 p.m. call to log in for US, please these 3 hours, unless it's critical to me and also to you, but please go through that one filter. Well, don't text, don't email, of course, is passive, but don't send me a WhatsApp where I have the blue ticks on and kind of, puts pressure on me to respond. I bring them into my world. I tell them it creates a pressure. I like to respond. So please understand, don't do it. So I think it's being very honest and having those conversations and telling them it's okay to draw your boundaries. Because let's take a scenario where we don't draw a boundary. We won't be able to manage it all, and we may have a breakdown at mid-juncture when we don't expect. So it's okay to define boundaries. It's okay to say I need help. It's okay to put your iPad near your kitchen or wherever it's safe and you think you want to cook. It's absolutely okay to do that and multitask if that's possible. We've had women colleagues walk up and say, I have kids and I need to homeschool them in terms of, let's say, you're logging in, but your parents' presence is required. I've had my male team members come and tell me, my wife is busy, but I need to sign in, and therefore, is that okay? It's absolutely okay. Not having a hesitant moment to say, no, it's okay. It's absolute spontaneity. I think some of these things have helped, Shalini. We women have a little longer journey to travel in terms of household inequity and our ambition at work and stereotypes diluting away. But you know what? Nobody's going to do it for us. So let you and I do it. Well, I have boundaries and I can't do this. I need a break because I need to be with my mom-in-law. I have been very vocal about it, and I must thank my bosses, my senior executives, who have said, it's okay. They have called. Are you taking a break? Are you going somewhere? I'm like, no. I am tired. I want to take a week away. I'm not going anywhere. I just need me to down. And it's wonderful to receive a call of care. I don't think anybody has pointed fingers. I think we live in a society that understands if you can walk a little bit of a journey. And if it's tough, I think we'll deal with it. But let's talk about it has been my simple guidance to myself and all the other women colleagues.
And that's so powerful because it's also the stand we take about the choices we make, right? It could also be at work. There are times women have to leave at 4 o'clock because they need to go pick up their kid. If you do a shame walk out of the office, then you're giving permission for other people to say something about you. If you get up and then say, hey, you know what, I'm done with my work, and like I've agreed with everybody, I'm leaving at 4 o'clock, and it makes sense to me. And then it's all okay because you are setting the boundary, like you said. You're saying no, you're saying yes. I think that's huge learning. Thank you for that. So maybe I can take a light moment and then come back to a question. And so we're talking about empathetic leaders, and then we're talking about everybody being at home. And so there is an employee who called me, a woman employee who called me saying, "Hey, I have a unique situation. My mother-in-law is worried that my boss keeps calling me and asking me how I'm doing. So, how do I handle it?" Right? And this is where, and slightly over enthusiastic leader made it his mandate maybe to call this woman team member every few hours to say, "Hey, how are you doing? Is everything okay? You were on this call, whatever," right? And then the mother-in-law got suspicious. While it's a joke, and we have very little time, so top two tips of how do you integrate work and life. And this might happen, we might be at home for a much longer time. What advice do you have for Amit? Maybe we could start with you to integrate life and work.
Yeah, on the example you said, I highlighted, right? So when you do the personal check-ins, there are certain conditions or boundaries. So we have to be aware of that, right? And that's a bit of sensitization, yeah, and nothing else. I think people's intent is always the right one, yeah. So that's all I'm assuming. No, I think in terms of work-life integration, even pre-COVID, I was one of the as a MD of the location, yeah. So I used to leave at 4 from my office, right? I would block 2 hours for myself, 4 to 6. No one can set any meeting during that time, yeah, because it's a 1 hour commute, and I need 1 hour to just de-stress. I have 2 young kids, 8-year-old daughter, 3-year-old son, so it's fun, just spending some time as I come from the office. And then if I have my evening meetings, work to do, emails, I'll do it right at my own pace, right? That's a concept of way you work. So creating a structure and discipline is extremely important. It's tough, yeah, but it's very important. So even during the start of the crisis, I mean, none of us had the right infrastructure. Yeah. So, and my office had standing desk, and I never used to sit, in those standing desks. So I clicked a photograph. I put a table on top of my desk table and laptop over that, and I was just showing to them, "Hey, I'm not fully prepared with the infrastructure, but this is whatever Indian jugaad or frugal innovation. But you have to make it work, right? You have to make it work, and it's okay." I think that's a word, Supriya, you also used, and I'm using it quite often. Especially in the personal work-life integration. I have so many times, my kids, especially my 3-year-old, who just flies by. Thankfully, he hasn't been in the last 1 hour. And it's okay to have that cute interruption. And if it's on the other side, I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong in, if these things are happening. It just creates more fun, light moments during meetings. So I think you have to model some of the behaviors, share that it's completely okay if these things are happening. I think people is they are trying to juggle so many responsibilities, household chores. Yeah, women definitely have a higher proportion of work activities. That's true, right? And we have to be very considerate to that fact. So I would say structure, discipline, and just lowering it's okay if something is happening, few things are not working. If call gets disconnected, they will re-log in. So trust again becomes very important here.
And also asking somebody how they would want these calls to be done so that the mother-in-law doesn't misinterpret. But great points. Thank you for sharing that. And we have 2 minutes, so I thought we'll end with something fun. Do like a rapid fire. So I'm going to say a few words, few sentences, and Supriya, maybe we'll start with you and then do alternate. Maybe talk about the first thing that comes to your mind and tell us a little bit about why that came to your mind, right? So maybe start with Supriya, personal self-care routine.
So personal self-care routine is I'm very comfortable with being self-focused. I know this is my time, and therefore this is my time to engage at work. This is my time to sit with my family. This is my time to cook. This is my time for myself. So I think I have a very clear, in discipline, I find freedom is what Art of Living Sri Ravi Shankar says, that I meditate, following his teachings. It's simple, very routine, broad discipline, but once in a while, of course, give a damn and care to the wind, kind of, let go. But that is, I would say, self-focus. And lots of sleep and great Hollywood and Bollywood movies keeps me de-stressed.
Nice.
And tons of Netflix and Amazon binge watching. That is my self-care routine.
You just defined everything that I would do, including Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, by the way. Yeah, that is great. And if I can just one anecdote on that, right? In the past, self-care used to be seen as selfish, and it's not. And everybody needs to understand that if we don't take care of ourselves, we'll never be there for somebody else. So it's really important for us to. Okay, Amit, mental well-being.
So mental well-being doesn't get the right attention. I think we need to really focus more on that, really embed that in our well-being proposition. I think companies earlier used to do it only, as like one of the extra activity, but now it
Right.
has to become the core element. So I'll be a strong sponsor and promoter of mental well-being. But
Great.
by the way, what Supriya just highlighted, Supriya, I think we share common interest, right? The way you just explained how you structure your self-care routine, it's exactly, in my case as well. But the only thing is that I'm a foodie, so that becomes a bit difficult to manage high calorie intakes. So
Yeah, maybe this is a suggestion for the summit for next time to bring us together for mindfulness. But can I maybe summarize by saying some amazing stories, amazing advices, and I'm sure we'll be around to answer some questions maybe that might come up later. But thank you. You have not shared one thing that could be Googled, which I think is great. And all of your personal learnings and examples have been amazing. And what I'm taking away is be yourself, make it as simple as possible, and just walk the talk. And as leaders, if we can do that, then and bring the humanness back to who we are, then I'm sure we'll be able to be successful leaders, redefining the leadership roles, as well as helping our organization. So thank you, Amit. Thank you, Supriya. You guys have been great, and looking forward to a lot more of such conversations in the future. Thank you.